Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a very special online event today. It's called Access Heart Intelligence to Transcend 3D Consciousness. Raise your energy baseline, influence your DNA, and improve the quality of your health and relationships. My name is Stephen Dine. I'm the founder and CEO of the Shift Network, and I'm really thrilled to be with you here, getting to just go deep with one of the foremost scientists exploring the frontiers of our consciousness, and particularly related to our heart, which is at the center of how we shift ourselves and ultimately our world. And we're going to learn some fascinating new science, get to explore these frontiers, also take some practices back home with us. And there's a chance to go much deeper in a brand new program featuring this faculty member whose name is Rollin McCraty. He is a PhD. He's the director of research at the HearthMath Institute, and he's overall just a brilliant and heart-centered guy. So Rollin, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Hi, Stephen. God, it's great to be back. I always enjoy so much these courses that I've been doing with Shift for the past couple of years. So it's really an honor to be back.
Yeah, we love them too. So great. Well, we're going to dive right in today. And I know you've done this a few times before, but for people who are new, I think it's always helpful to have a little bit of your backstory of what brought you to this work and really compelled you that the heart was at the epicenter of our everything good in our lives.
Wow. I'll try and make a long story very short. My original career and training was in communications engineering, electrical engineering, and used to work for Motorola. You know, and Stephen, I always had, I guess I just came into the planet this time around with a deeper yearning for really understanding what's underneath a lot of the things that I was learning and teaching. And, you know, I used to ask, like, well, what is a magnetic field or an electric field? You know, and I didn't make my professors very happy because it was always mathematical formulas and to describe their behavior, but nobody could really ever explain, or really to this day, what they actually are. Anyway, that led me to a deeper search that eventually led me to California, and I got a degree in consciousness studies, which then led me to getting involved with helping bring spirulina to the world, you know, a superfood. This is back in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. And that then led us to building a spirulina farm, actually, to prove you could feed the world's hungry populations, which we did way ahead of our time. And honestly, I can say that it really didn't go anywhere because of people. It wasn't, we had the technology, but it was really the political level, the will to really want to even do something to help people feed, at that time, feed hungry people. And so I really realized at that point, even though we used to say it, you know, like it's really about consciousness. And that really brought it home that without shifting consciousness, raising our awareness and our consciousness, becoming more inclusive in our thinking, our behaviors, that nothing was really going to change. And then, so I decided to go make money again, started a company which became very successful, and through those contacts in the early years met Doc Childry, who's the founder of HearthMath. And long story short, it became very clear to me very quickly that he was onto something that had the very real potential to raise consciousness quickly, kind of the straight line path, and that at scale, at masses, and that's. I knew even then that we weren't going to solve the world's problems without that shift in consciousness. It wasn't about the technology, because we already had that in many ways. So that's really what led me here. So I can honestly say it was a personal experience. And after I was introduced through Doc to the heart, the deeper aspects of the heart, what we're talking about, and we'll be talking about in this course, that the heart really is that access point, that bridge to our higher intelligence, to our larger self, not just a metaphor. And I can honestly say, once I started integrating that into my own life, back when I owned that company, even before HearthMath was even conceived of, I made more personal gains, I would say, in 3 months than I had in many years of meditation and those kind of practices. Not that I didn't get a lot of benefit out of those, I did, but it was just a whole other dimension, if you will, of growth and inner experience. So that led me to sell that company and really partner along with Doc Childry and some others to help him found HearthMath.
So exciting background, and I kind of want to use the jumping off point there of you saying that the heart is really the portal to higher consciousness, and that sort of if consciousness is in the foreground and that's how we shift the planet, then instead of thinking of consciousness as something that's associated primarily with our brain and our head, like why should we be really focusing more of our attention on the heart as that epicenter or portal of where consciousness really evolves?
Well, it's, Stephen, if we kind of look at history, well, in fact, one of the fellows that used to head up our education division here at the HearthMath Institute, man literally had 3 PhDs. He was a professor at UCLA and retired and came to work here. And one of his passions or hobbies, I guess you could say, was the study of world religions. And in fact, he wrote a paper back then, this is quite a few years ago, but what he was really able to point out in great clarity was that every major religion, the most common denominator across them all, whether we're talking Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, Judaism, and the list goes on, is the understanding of the heart being that bridge or that access point to courage, to wisdom, and all the sayings we have in our natural language. I think most people kind of intuitively already know this. That's why we say, sing with your heart or ask your heart. It always knows the right answer. These type of sayings. So what I'm saying isn't really new, but what our research has really shown is that this is not just a metaphor, Stephen. This is actually, I think, a deep truth to this. And it's why it is so fundamental in so many of the great philosophies and religions of the world. So here at HearthMath, we do not take a religious approach. We take a very hardcore scientific approach. In the first class of the new series, I'm going to spend the entire first class reviewing a lot of the research we conducted here in our facility, along with some other research from around the world that all points to the same thing, where we've been actually able to measure that in terms of what I call non-local intuition. The heart's the first to get the information, and it sends a measurably different neural signal to the brain. Then you get a brain response in the body. And so we're starting to be able to ground this now with some very rigorous scientific data that supports this. And it's just kind of a funny story that when I first published some of these studies back in the late 1990s, some of the results of some of those early studies on intuition, I had to use language like to get it, in peer-reviewed scientific journals. That the heart has access to a field of information that's not bound by the limits of time and space. So that was perfectly acceptable language back then. A little bit more out of the closet these days, but when you really think of, well, what is that? What is that field of information that's not bound by time and space? Well, that really is our larger self, or higher self, or soul, or spirit, whatever you want to call it. It's part of our undivided wholeness. Now, I'm just suggesting here that the heart, or the energetic heart, in more particularly, is that bridge. And we've spent 30 years now developing tools and techniques and in-the-moment processes that we can go directly to that kind of that straight line to the deeper heart, or what we call heart's intelligence, and bring that in a very practical way into our day-to-day decisions and choices. And it becomes our best friend in a way, because it really gives us that inner guidance for making those choices, whether it's about our health, about how to interact with people, how to deal with interactions. If you're dealing with somebody in a challenging situation, it really becomes online. And then that actually then starts unfolding synchronicities in life. I know for me, they've become, I expect them, if you will. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea.
Yeah, that's great. And so in the title for today, we talk about accessing heart intelligence to transcend 3D consciousness. So you're pointing the way to why the heart is a portal to our higher self. So what do you mean? What do we mean by transcend 3D consciousness?
Well, I think that's a term that I think most people are familiar with. I mean, if we look at kind of the planetary baseline of consciousness, that's called 3D these days, or has been. And it's not really just about the mind, because I want a brain and a mind, and I want it to work really well. But you can think of transcending that as kind of downloading a new operating system, if you will. So that the fact the mind level consciousness is one of the big winners when we're able to integrate and align it with the intuitive intelligence of the heart, because it starts getting the answers and the uplift and the upgrade that it's really been wanting in a certain way. But 3D has been around for thousands of years. And when we talk about 3D consciousness, this is the things like frustration, judgments, those irritations, the blaming others, all of that goes on that keeps us locked in a certain dimension of intelligence. And, a kind of a line that at least struck me funny that actually Doc Childry threw out a while back is, 3D that doesn't want to lose customers. It's really tricky. It really wants to kind of keep us in that, if you will, domain or that dimension of consciousness. It's very helpful, let's put it that way, if we have some tools and techniques to kind of help rise above those 3D frequencies, if you will, those vibrations of our consciousness to another dimension, literally another dimensional vibration of consciousness, or really awareness would be probably a better term here, Stephen.
Cool. Let's talk a little bit about energy and how the heart is also really central to our whole kind of emotional well-being, our energy, like the overall flow of life force through us. And I'd love for you to share some of the science behind that.
Sure. And we can talk about that on lots of levels. I mean, most fundamentally, the heart's the first organ to develop in the fetus. And without it, if it doesn't beat that first beat, we have spontaneously abort. So it's the signature of life. And some really neat and fascinating studies that actually confirm many studies from really the 1800s is that even in development, without the heart's field, that first heartbeat and the field of the heart, we don't have the information of how to develop it to become who we're going to become, even at the physical level. So there's already a lot of historical or existing evidence of the information that's mediated by the heart's field. Now, if we talk just physiologically speaking, because there's multiple levels here, the heart's by far the largest source of electromagnetic and magnetic energy in the body. And like when we put electrodes on the body to measure the electrocardiogram, the heartbeat, it's called the electrocardiogram because that's what we're measuring is electricity. And now whenever you have a flow of current, which is what electrodes measure, and we put those across someone's chest or on the head to measure brain waves, we also create magnetic fields from that flow of current. And one of the characteristics that we don't think about oftentimes of a magnetic field is they go through things. This is why cell phones work indoors, for example. It's the magnetic component that goes through the wall, or you can even be in an elevator and still make a cell phone call. Well, in our bodies, the same thing is true. The magnetic field is generated by the heart, easily radiates out into the space around us. And some of the studies we did in our lab, this is going back quite a few years now, this has kind of become well known, is that the energetic or the magnetic field of the heart carries information about our health status, certainly about our emotional states. So we've been able to do a series of studies now, and this is all published in peer-reviewed journals and things, that there actually is an energetic communication system that goes on between people. We detect those fields from others and can decode that information being carried by them. But if we look inside of our own body, that field of the heart, every cell in our body feels that field and that information being carried by it. So that's one level. Then we can talk about heart energy, which would be more the kind of flow of heart energy, which with some training, and a lot of people probably listening to this who have meditative practices and things, probably have already developed the sensitivity to being able to feel those energy flows through our system. But when we amp up, if you will, the heart energy flowing through the system or the energetic systems of the body, from my perspective and what the research suggests even, is that's one of the best things we can do for self-healing, whether it's physical healing, or especially mental, emotional, where we can kind of get past a lot of the looping anxieties and worries and these types of things.
Really cool. So this, I think, is a good jumping off point into understanding heart coherence. I know that's really central to your whole work and why the heart is so good at regulating so many different functions in our body. So let's talk about what that means scientifically, and then how do we create it?
Sure. Well, heart coherence is a term we coined for a specific state of the heart rhythm. And just to give it for the viewers who might be new to this idea or this understanding, probably have to start with talking about what's called heart rate variability. And that just simply means that when you measure the time between each consecutive pair of heartbeats, that time interval between heartbeats is always changing. It's varying. Now, that's why we have a heart rhythm. So the heart is nothing like a metronome. It's always varying. And these time changes create patterns that underlie what we typically call the heart rhythm. Now, some of our very earliest work, going back to the early 1990s, I think we were the first to show that of all the things we can measure in the body, brain waves and skin conductance and many other things, that it was the rhythm of the heart that most accurately reflects our current real-time emotional state. And we found that when people are feeling stressful emotions, the impatience, frustration, overwhelm, brain fog, these types of feelings, that results in a desynchronization, we now know, in the activity in our higher brain and within the nervous system. That creates a very kind of erratic or chaotic looking heart rhythm when you look at it on this beat-to-beat basis. Now, on the other hand, when people are experiencing things like appreciation, for example, you walk out the door in the morning and it's just one of those gorgeous days and you have that feeling of like, oh God, what a beautiful day, right? You may not be thinking it, but you're feeling appreciation or gratitude. And that, when we have those feelings, whether it's, appreciation or gratitude or compassion, care, love, these types of emotions, that flips our physiology literally into a completely different operational mode that we now call heart coherence, where the heart rhythm is the most reflective of this, Stephen, where it looks like this beautiful rolling hills or sine wave pattern. And that's important because that is reflecting a lot about what's going on inside of our body. And we call this coherence because coherence is a term that describes how the harmonious activity of all the parts of a complex system are working together in a harmonious way or not. So when we're in that heart coherent state, the body is functioning at a way more efficient mode. We're using a lot less energy and getting a lot more done, if you will, physiologically speaking. But it especially affects a lot of people don't realize that the heart sends more information to the brain than the other way around. And that the quality or the pattern of those heart signals being sent from the heart to the brain profoundly affect brain function, our ability to think clearly, make good decisions. But they're also going to the key centers in the brain involved in emotional experience. So when we're able to shift into a heart coherent state, the signals that are sent to the amygdalas and the parts of the brain involved in emotional experience and regulation get a completely different signal. So it's kind of another door in to being able to rise above, if you will, a lot of what we would call depleting emotions here at HearthMath into ones that really add energy to our system and really help us really navigate stress and day-to-day challenges with a lot more grace and ease, kind of able to really access the point of our inner dignity, if you will, as we navigate the life's challenges.
What are some of the concrete outcomes or benefits that you've chronicled with your research around creating that sense of coherence as a baseline for how we navigate our life?
Yeah, great question. We're primarily, Stephen, a basic research facility here. We're really trying to understand deeply what the inner workings of the heart, brain, and within the physiology of emotions really all about. So one of our early strategies was to really publish very high quality work and research and develop, once we understood what coherence is, develop different programs and tools and techniques that allow people to shift into the coherent state really anytime, anywhere. And that's one of the unique things about HearthMath. It's something we can do in real time, right in the middle of the traffic jams of life. It can be a literal traffic jam, or use that figuratively. It could be a staff meeting, an interaction with a family member, a coworker, whatever. So then our goal was to really motivate others to do the research in many different populations. And I'm thrilled to say that work, there's now probably well over 500 independent studies that have taken HearthMath and used our understandings, coherence trainings in a wide variety of populations. So I couldn't possibly mention all the benefits and outcomes that have now been shown, but some of the high level ones. If we're talking about physical health, multiple studies now showing this is one of the fastest ways to lower our blood pressure. And through practicing the techniques regularly, even over a few weeks, that will change our baseline or our default setting. So many people have been able to get off all their hypertension medications, for example. Been studies in people with heart failure showing improved functional status in a fairly short time. Hormonal balance, studies showing that our cortisol is greatly reduced and DHEA increased. So hormonal balance, immune function improved. So just on that level, but also many studies that have looked at emotional health, shifting out of depression, really being able to deal with stress and anxiety in a very quick and effective way. Many studies on that level. PTSD, for example, multiple studies. Trauma cases, and or in education, many studies have also looked at increasing our mental and cognitive functions. So being able to get higher test scores in high school students, for example, being able to process information faster. Also, not a lot of research studies, but many case histories now. In fact, I know of 3 world records that were set by Olympic athletes after they started doing coherence practices. So performance is another huge factor, whether it's in golf or really any kind of sports context. So I hope that gives you kind of a feel of the idea. I mean, there's really nothing that I think we could think of that adding coherence to can't improve.
So yeah, it really seems like it's just the master regulator of our whole system function, and really exciting. So some areas I didn't even know about there. So I know you wanted to also explore a little bit like some of the leading edge of this with like affecting our DNA as well. So I wonder if you can share a little bit of the context of how
Sure.
working with our heart this way could actually affect our DNA.
Yeah, happy to. I mean, and in this upcoming course, I did of course, last year and before, and I wanted to do something that's really new. What is the next step? And I'm actually, in a way, dusting off some of the earlier research we did here in our laboratory, and along with some really new stuff that hasn't really been shown anywhere that I'm going to be doing in this course. Most people now have heard of epigenetics and have at least a basic understanding of what that is and what that means, which is how the things outside of the gene, or the DNA affect what the DNA expresses and what it does. So about the same time, some of the first research was happening. In fact, Bruce Lipton was one of the early pioneers of epigenetics, was just learning about stem cells and putting them in different petri dishes and showing that if you change the environment, the culture medium slightly, the cells will become different types of cells. Well, about that same time period, we were doing some experiments. This is in the very early 90s here in our laboratory, where we were able to look at what's called the conformational state of DNA. Now, that sounds like a big complicated word, but it's really how wound or unwound are the 2 strands of the DNA. Now, that's something that is relatively straightforward to measure in a thing called a UV spectrophotometer. We can actually measure the winding of the DNA. And so we spent a couple of years doing these experiments, but we added we wanted to really ask the question, can we intentionally influence the DNA? Can we talk to it? Can we cause it through intention to either wind or unwind? And so we did many studies around this over a couple of year period. And at the end of the day, what those studies showed was the answer to that is yes. But 2 things are important. Heart coherence, when we're in that coherent state, right, that optimal state of coherence, and we add the intention to the DNA to wind or unwind, when those 2 things are combined, it's fairly reliable capacity to intentionally talk to, if you will, and cause the DNA to wind or unwind. Now, these were important experiments because they show that these are obviously DNAs in a test tube, you're not touching it. When they're in the field of the person, that we do have an energetic communication system with our DNA. So then we add that to a lot of the epigenetic work that's now happened since then. And a good friend of mine who I'll be showing some of his research, he's an Italian stem cell engineer and cardiologist, Carlo Ventura is his name. We've been good friends for many years, and he's been just doing some fascinating work with programming DNA through energetic fields. And one of the things that Carlo and I have talked about for years is how the DNA is really acts like an antenna to our energetic system. And so what I'm going to suggest here in the course is that the epigenetic changes happen in real time, much faster than probably is even being realized. And many studies have now shown that our energetic environment, in other words, what we're feeling, whether we're in a childhood environment of trauma or, these types of things, do change the epigenetic expression of our DNA that lasts, in some cases, for life, unless we learn how to change our energetic systems and what we're basically telling or asking the DNA to do for us.
Truly fascinating. So if our DNA is sort of like an antenna, then in a way our heart's kind of like the broadcast. It's like the broadcast stations picking up the signal.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I wonder if you could also comment a little bit on how some of the research around intuition and some of the kind of access to, as you were saying, the kind of non-local information or information beyond the senses. How do you really see that unfolding as you sort of open the heart and create more coherence? How does our higher cognition and intuition open up?
Yeah, well, great question. I'll tell you, to be honest, the reason we got into the actual lab-based research, electrophysiological kind of hardcore research on intuition was that, again, back in the early 90s, so many people, and that's still true to this day, we're talking about as they learn these coherence practices and start really opening the heart, that their intuition was like on steroids. I mean, they were actually using terms like that. And then the second thing, almost always out of their mouths, is saying, God, and synchronicities, they're happening. This is noticeable. This is different. And I mean, intuitively, I understood why that would be true, but that motivated us to do these lab-based studies I was talking about earlier. And the one thing I didn't mention earlier, though, about that is in a lot of these protocols where we have people wired up to brain waves and heartbeats and skin conductance and these other measures, is some of the early experiments, we had them go through these protocols twice. Once in their normal state, we're nice to them, right? We come in, we wire them up, we do all the stuff, and we move right into doing the scientific protocols. In another case, science terms here, we counterbalanced it and would have them do what's called a heart lock-in. It's one of the HearthMath techniques where you really shift into that coherent state and sustain it for a few minutes and really radiate that coherent heart energy to all your cells, the DNA and all the cells in the body. And then go through that experiment again. And it was radically different, Stephen, the difference in those two states, but in those intuition experiments. So what I can really say that what that gives us support for is that when we're in coherence, it opens that channel, if you will, to our larger self or our higher self. So from my perspective, we're really accessing the intelligence, that other dimensional intelligence of our undivided wholeness. So we're just opening that channel for that information to flow, down to the energetic heart and into the DNA and into our consciousness. So it's one of the most, I would say, from my own experience, I can honestly say that this is one of the most powerful ways of rapidly advancing or raising our awareness and our consciousness.
Well, it's so beautifully explained. It really makes so much sense, Rollin. And I know you were going to want to guide us in a practice here today so we can begin to really take the principles of what you've learned from this research into our own lives. And so I think now would be great. I think you're going to do the shift and lift technique.
Exactly. When I wanted to do this technique, because it's not in the course I'll be teaching. It was in the last year's course. And it's something that's a technique, just to give a little setup here for it. Now, it might take a little practice to get really good at it, to be able to do it. But this is a technique that's really designed and intended to be used right in the moment. Eyes open. When you're in a conversation with someone, this is really about a technique, especially to be used when you're interacting with somebody. Maybe you're having to deal with somebody that's a little difficult, or having a bad day, or you're in a meeting, and things are going a little sideways, right? And it's getting inefficient, and you can kind of feel the sparks flying, that kind of thing. Or you're just having a conversation with, your spouse or your child or parent. To really help open that energetic communication channel and elevate the communication. So there's 3 steps to the technique. I'll kind of guide you through them here. So step 1 is called heart-focused breathing. For this step, you focus your attention in the area of the heart. And you just put your attention right here in the center of your chest. And imagine your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area. And just pretend your breath is flowing in and out of that area. It helps ground you into that center. Breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. Just want to find a rhythm that's comfortable. Find your own resonant frequency there. Just set with the heart-focused breathing. Practice that for a few breath cycles. Now, in the next step, I'm going to activate feelings of kindness, appreciation, genuine connection, or an attitude of deep listening. Okay, so in this second step, you just want to add, while you're doing the heart-focused breathing, really creating that inner feeling. Breathe that feeling of kindness, appreciation, a genuine connection, or an attitude of deep listening while you're in that situation or that conversation. Just do that for a bit here. Breathe those feelings. Now, in the next step, we're going to radiate. We're going to radiate those heart qualities to raise your vibration and help lift the energy field environment that surrounds you. So let's just radiate those heart qualities, that appreciation, that feeling of connection into our energy field that surrounds us. Okay, so I think you probably get this, and it's a pretty simple technique, and we actually put a lot of care here at HearthMath into making the steps of the various techniques simple. And in fact, that's why some people will miss the power of it sometimes, because it seems too simple. And if we really think about it, how often do we actually do these steps, even though we might have heard them before or kind of know that already? When we're in a heated conversation or somebody that maybe we're not getting along with. And I really encourage you to play with this. Become a self-scientist, a citizen scientist. It's amazing. I think you'll find it if you really do it with sincerity, with a kind of a genuine, meaningful, these steps, that it's not like a magic bullet. I'm going to just magically change everything every time. But I'll be willing to bet you that if you play with it sincerely, that you'll start to see the difference it makes in these conversations and interactions that you have with people. I've seen meetings just completely turn around where just maybe one or two people start doing this and others don't even know what you're doing, right? I've heard from many teachers, for example, that in their classroom it's getting a little rowdy and out of hands. If they just shift to the heart and radiate these kinds of attitudes, that the whole classroom dynamics very quickly change. So hopefully that'll give you a take-home technique that you can actually try.
Well, thank you, Rollin. I remember talking to Deborah, who's the CEO, Deborah Rosman over there, and she said that she starts her every day by going through all of her meetings of the day and sending heart in advance to the meetings and really harmonizing. It starts to get into these more advanced practices where you're consciously seeding these qualities into many different fields and connections remotely, which I know you have some interesting research that shows the remote effects as well, not just when you're in the physical presence of something.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, in one of the classes or the modules, I'm really going to focus on how love connects us. And that's some of our latest research, Stephen, showing that how heart-to-heart synchronization can occur. And we've been showing that for years in a certain way within a room or in a local setting. But now we've moved past that, and it's even surprising us. I would never have predicted the degree of synchronization, heart-to-heart synchronization that it can occur between people, even non-locally. But we've only seen it so far. I won't say it never happens, but I'm willing to say that one of the important requirements for this is that there is this positive emotional connection between those individuals for that synchronization to happen. In fact, one of the things I'll be showing in that particular module is research that we've just completed, and we'll just starting the publishing process. So this will be really some of the first to ever see some of this in the course, is how we're seeing at the group level. I won't go into a lot of detail here, Stephen, but we had groups of 20 people in 5 countries, and we were monitoring their heart rhythms, their HRV continuously, 24 hours a day over a 15-day period, and did some exercises within those groups. And again, I would never have staked my reputation or even thought of predicting what we're seeing there, is that at the group level across countries now, so these are groups in Saudi Arabia and England and Lithuania and New Zealand and California, that even there at the group level across groups, that we are seeing synchronization well above what you would expect through random chance to happen even there as we build these kind of connections with each other. So there really is, this is evidence showing or pointing to that there really are group fields that are affected where we share information across the group. And I actually truly believe this is one of the fundamental factors in optimal function in groups. When you really see the high-performing orchestras or sports teams, it's almost like there's this unseen magical connection amongst the team members, which I think we're seeing more and more evidence that it really is a group field that's formed when we're able to get along well with each other, when we're able to have these positive connections.
It's exciting to bring some science to the magic of groups there that has otherwise been hard to explain fully. So I think there was one other area that we wanted to cover a little bit, and it may have been implicit in what we've already talked about, but this really has to do with a higher sense of spiritual purpose in our lives, and how this work with the heart, so many mystical traditions really locate the center of awakening and spiritual realization, enlightenment in the heart. And so I'd love you to share just a little bit from a researcher standpoint, like how does this sort of naturally lead into a sense of connection to a real deeper purpose for our lives?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're right. We kind of have alluded to it a little bit in previous conversations. But if it really is what I'm suggesting, that we really do have a higher self or a soul or a spirit, whatever we want to call it, based on our background, I certainly believe that to be true. I more than believe it, actually. That's part of our undivided wholeness. It's who we are. We just have the physical body, but we also have an energetic system that you can't put under a microscope yet, at least yet. You can't put a thought under a microscope or an intuition or an emotion, but we know there exists. We experience them. So when we're here on the kind of in the 3D of the planet, and we're out of alignment with that larger part of ourself. That's what I would say really our I'll even call it our blueprint really exists at, is at that larger self level. And we can get kind of off track of what our true purpose is, what we kind of even came to the planet to do, to learn, to be, to become, to serve. And that's often through, ambitions, what we're trained into as children. And that often leaves a lot of people feeling a certain hole, a certain emptiness, because we have this deeper sense that something's missing, something's not quite right. We're not really living up to our potential. We're not unfolding who we are really meant to or who we really can become. So it's really when we open the heart and reestablish or establish that connection to our larger self, and then we start aligning the heart and brain. And that unfolds our true purpose and many other things in life. So life becomes really much more fulfilling. And I've seen people, after practicing the coherence practices, make some pretty radical changes in their life that they have oftentimes even felt they should do, but just didn't have the courage to or weren't sure. But once they really get that deep inner sense of connecting with who they really are, then that gives them the not that that's true for everybody, but some of friends of mine and people I've asked, in fact, I had my own personal experience, the same thing happened to me, have absolutely no regrets. When they look back, their life is much more fulfilling. They're much happier, more at peace. They're able to find that sense of inner stillness and alignment But for a lot of us, we kind of bounce around through careers until we find that deeper purpose that is more in alignment.
So exciting. Well, Rollin, it's just really amazing all of what the research is pointing to and the practices as well. And so I think it's so exciting that you're offering a brand new program. And I want to speak about that some so people who are inspired now can go deeper and really take these practices in, make it a baseline, open their heart, access higher intelligence, improve their performance in life, their health, their well-being. All the benefits that you've talked about are really available. And so we've done quite a number of launches with HearthMath over the years. We're always delighted to do it because we just feel like you guys have done the research, you're delivering the goods. This is really much needed medicine for us all. So the program that Rollin's going to be teaching is called The Power of Your Heart Intelligence, the science and practice of raising your emotional vibration and connecting with your higher self. You can see it laid out in detail at the URL heartcoherencecourse.com. Coherence is 2 E's, heartcoherencecourse.com. It's a 7-week program. There are no prerequisites. So it really is just if your heart is drawing you, if you're intuitively drawn to learn more, to practice more, to really unfold what's possible through the portal of your heart into a whole new lifestyle, you've got a great opportunity to do so with the world-leading researcher. And also he's going to be working with Sarah Moore, who's a HearthMath master trainer, who's co-leading the course. And she's really good at mentoring people across a wide variety of backgrounds and interests. She's done everything from military to government agencies to corporate trainers, cardiology, cancer patients, a lot of applications. So Rollin, I'd love for you sharing your own words, what you're excited to bring forward and have people learn in this next program. And then I'll read out the module titles and you give us a preview of what's coming in each.
Yeah, this is truly a new course. I wanted this one, Stephen, to be something that the people who've taken the previous course, whether it was for me or Debbie and Howard in years past, something that was new and going to be different. It's kind of I won't say an advance, but it is a next step. It's also very grounded and practical for somebody that's their first experience to HearthMath. I guarantee you'll get a lot out of this. And I'll be introducing some new practices, some new exercises that you won't have learned before. And if you're interested in the science, it's not just a science thing. It'll be a good blend of the scientific grounding, and then we'll have a lot of experiential in pretty much all of the modules. I'd really invite anybody that, whether you've been to one of my previous programs or not, please join us for this. I think you'll get a lot out of it.
Great. So module 1 is called The Science of Heart Intelligence, Unlocking the Intuitive Heart for Reliable Inner Guidance.
Yeah. In this module, we're going to cover some of the research on intuition, and we'll go through some of the protocols more in depth of how that really works, show the data, so you really get to see that for yourself. And then we'll go into an exercise. Well, it's really a practice, a technique that you can use for actually opening that channel to the heart and accessing it. And we'll spend plenty of time practicing that so that you'll have a take-home tool that you can use anytime, anywhere to go in and ask your heart's deeper inner guidance. And then we'll also cover how, as we do that practice, that starts opening that channel in more day-to-day kind of online activities.
Great. So module 2 is called Deepen Your Intuitive Guidance and Inner Stillness Through Heart Coherence Practices for Optimal Mental Function and Health.
Yeah, in this module, we're going to dive into, on the science side, some of the physiology, what heart coherence is, how the heart and brain communicate, and some of the research around that. And as in pretty much all of the modules, we'll also be introducing another exercise and technique of how we can shift into and stabilize our heart coherence, and some practices for how that really does bring in more stability at the level of our mind and brain. So we have more mental clarity, better decision-making, and so on.
Module 3, raise your energetic vibration to establish coherent baselines for personal transformation.
Yeah, this is an important one. And in this, I'm going to kind of briefly cover the physiology of what a baseline is and how our brain actually works, how we're always doing pattern matching from past experience and looking familiar from not familiar. And I think this will be an enlightening module in some ways to understand how our brain actually works and why we resist change often. We'll kind of get covered at a physiological level. But and I've talked about that, some of the basics of that in previous courses, but we're going to go way deeper in this one and start to kind of bridge that into I'll call it kind of our energetic vibrational or state baselines as well. And we're going to kind of get more into becoming more aware of the vibrations and the tones that are going on in our energetic system. So we're going to be introducing some exercises and practices that move past just basic self-awareness, which we've talked about in the past. And of course, that's important. But there's a deeper level of self-awareness that I hope we can kind of help people get onto, which is feeling and becoming more aware of our energetic system and the vibrations going on there, which often, or you tell almost always from my perspective, precede the physiological stuff. So we're able to get onto these triggers before they even turn into a physical stress response and be able to shift them at the energetic level.
Module 4, activate heart-aligned intentions and emotions to uplift your energy field that influences your DNA.
The title, this one's fairly self-explanatory. I'll show some of the data from the studies I was talking about earlier on how we can intentionally interact with our DNA. And I think you'll find fascinating stuff on what we used to think was junk DNA, which we now know that's not the case at all. So I'll actually show some pictures of how that DNA turns into loops and things, and that's what controls the epigenetic expression. But I'm really going to show you, especially going to show you how it's not just the physical environment, what we eat and these types of things. And of course, that's important, but how it's our energetic and the emotional energetic and the vibrations in our energetic system that are really one of the main players in affecting our DNA, and whether it's regulating or upregulating immune systems or downregulating immunity and the stress responses and how that works.
Module 5, emotional alchemy, moving beyond the grip of 3D consciousness for improved self-awareness, self-compassion, and inner peace.
Yeah, in this module, we're going to dig on into 3D and what that is, what we mean by that. And an important thing I'll just add on here, 3D is not bad. It's a stepping stone. I mean, 3D is way better than 2D, but we're taking that next step now to kind of move past the 3D consciousness and how we actually do that. So we're going to kind of be digging into some of the vibrations that kind of keep us locked in 3D and how we can identify those and some very practical ways we can start shifting those. And I think this is a module that'll be relevant to really anyone, no matter where we are on our path, on the evolutional consciousness path. And everybody's in a different place. Well, a lot of us are in different places along that journey. So this will be relevant for no matter where we are, whether we've had a lot of practices in the past or we're just beginning the kind of unfolding who we really are and how we can expand and raise our consciousness.
Module 6, energetic connectivity, love, and the global field environment, co-creating a kinder, more peaceful, and harmonious world.
Yeah, this is it's probably one of my favorite modules. And this is be a lot of the work we've been doing more recently, where we're really measuring the global energetic environment. For example, one of our projects called the Global Coherence Initiative, as we have magnetometer stations all around the Earth now, specifically designed to measure the resonant frequencies in the Earth's fields. So I'm going to be showing, we've published many papers in the last few years on this. So I'll be showing you, I think this will be a blow away for a lot of us if you haven't seen this before, of how deeply and fundamentally we are interconnected with the energetic environments we live in, which makes intuitive sense, but it really helps to see the data. And then I'll be sharing some of the newer research here that we have just published or just publishing as well on this. And some practical ways of how we can not only feed our personal field with higher vibrations and awareness vibrations, but also how that's interacting with the larger global field and how what we feed the field matters, both for our own health and well-being, but how it's also affecting the global field environment.
And finally, Module 7, connect with your inner wisdom to unfold who you truly can become.
Again, I think the title says it all. We're going to dig a little bit deeply. We'll look under the hood of kind of, in a way, this last module kind of will tie the whole course together and go a little bit deeper. So we'll be going into some things like, as well as compassionate latitude and kind of that inner dignity state, some of these types of things, and how we can access and use those as powerhouses to really kind of keep on track, to really keep on that straight line path to unfolding and becoming more aligned with who we really are and unfolding who we're really meant to be and how to become that.
Well, what a super powerful course this is. And I'm so grateful for the caliber of research and deep thinking and that has gone into designing all of the exercises and practices and really giving people the tools they need to grow and evolve and awaken spiritually and really optimize their health on so many levels. So again, the program is laid out in detail at heart-coherence-course.com. Coherence has 2 E's, heart-coherence-course.com. It's a 7-week program. It is open to whoever wants to come. And so you are warmly welcome. You'll get not only the 7 90-minute live sessions with Rollin, which includes interactive time, Q&A time. There's also going to be recordings of the video and audio as well as word-for-word transcripts that you can study and highlight for years to come. There's a Facebook community to deepen sense of community around the work, and there are a number of bonuses you can find on the page as well. There's an excerpt from Heart Intelligence, Connecting with the Intuitive Guidance of the Heart. That's a PDF introduction, Chapter 1 and Chapter 5, all by HearthMath Institute. And there's also a PDF ebook from HearthMath called 12 HearthMath Tools for Reducing Stress and Staying Balanced. This is the special bonus you get when you sign up by midnight tonight. And Rollin, you want to share a little bit more about that special bonus?
I just wanted to highlight this one because it's one of my favorite quick little books that is chock full of 12 tools and techniques. I mean, it's like a little mini course in its own right here. So I hear nothing but rave reviews of this particular bonus. So I think it's just worth highlighting, Stephen.
Great. Well, it's going to be such a useful and powerful program and really chock full of new information and really great practices. And we've kept the investment really accessible. It's just 3 payments of $128. So you save 10% when you pay in full with 1 payment of $349. The course is going to start on May 31st, run Wednesdays at 4 Pacific, 7 Eastern. But even if you can't make those live times, you can still get the full value with the recordings, the transcripts, and the community as well. So I particularly also encourage you to go over to the page at heart-coherence-course.com and read through some of the testimonials. We just have reams and reams of them from previous courses about how it's helped people transform the relationship with stress, to become a positive person, to have a brighter future, trust your instincts, help transition through very difficult family conflict. There's so many applications when you really work at the epicenter of your body, mind, and soul. You can shift so many areas of your life, and really shows up in the testimonial quotes from people who've been through previous programs that Rollin has taught. So you're in for a treat. And again, this is also going to have a great co-teacher as well, who's Sarah Moore, who's a HearthMath master trainer. And so you're going to have the benefit of both of their wisdom, and you're going to have a great community and a great set of practices to move forward. So again, you can find all the details at heart-coherence-course.com, heart-coherence-course.com. So Rollin, we're nearing the end of our time. Anything that's still on your mind you want to share with folks who are considering going deeper with you?
Well, I guess all I would say at this point, Stephen, is I would just really like to do a personal invitation for anybody who might be seeing this, that I hope you join me and Sarah for this course. We've put a lot of time and thought into the creation of this course. We've been working on it for many, actually, I'd say weeks, but it's actually been months, to really create a course. And the way we connect the dots, the arc of the choreography throughout the 7 modules is really intended to create, I think, a meaningful experience that really will help move you forward from wherever you are in life. So I hope to see you there.
Well, thank you, Rollin, and thank you all so much for joining. What a fascinating hour. And again, you can find all the details to go further at heart-coherence-course.com, heart-coherence-course.com, and you can get that special booklet of 12 HearthMath tools for reducing stress and staying balanced ebook when you sign up by midnight tonight. So thank you all, and thank you, Rollin.
Take care, everyone.